Good morning, Witta's Wolves. It's Tuesday, April 28th. And where in the world is Mrs. Witta this morning? Well, where was she yesterday? Yesterday, I was in Savannah, Georgia, and I found out that Jacob was born in Georgia. Great guess. And yes, I was in Georgia. So where in the world is Mrs. Witta this morning? Well, I am in a northeastern state of the United States. I'm actually on a boardwalk that's in one of the cities in the state. In fact, this is the world largest boardwalk, or world longest boardwalk that's located in this state. And something interesting as well, if you've ever played the game Monopoly, all the streets in Monopoly are named after streets in the city, in this state. The first baseball game and the first college football game were played in this state, and Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, the phonograph, and motion picture projector in his lab in the state. Where in the world is Mrs. Witta this morning? All right, for our learning for today, you are going to listen to a mini lesson by Mrs. Jackson on the dolphins on duty. We read that last week. This time you're looking for one text feature, and you want to write down that one text feature and explain how it helps you understand the ideas in the text. There is a graphic organizer to help you organize your thinking. You can print it out or copy it if you'd like. This is practice for you. You do not need to submit it on your profile to get ready for what you're going to complete tomorrow and on Thursday. Okay, let's see. In math, you're going to watch Mrs. Mullen. She's going to use the Frayer model that you looked at last week, and you're going to represent multiplication in 4 different ways. Okay, and then there's going to be an example for you to try, 4 times 6. And there's thinking blocks that you can use. There's also a Frayer model in practice that you can use to help you with that. Again, this does not have to be submitted on Class Dojo, but this is preparation and practice for you for what you're going to complete tomorrow. All right, so let's look at science. In science, you're going to be going to STEM Scopes today. Again, you log in through your SSO sign in with the same username and password you use to log in on the school computer. And you're going to watch a Content Connections video, 3.9a, and watch Safari with the Suraj Elephant Gathering. That should be really interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to reading The World According to Humphrey. We're in Chapter 2, Nightlife. For the rest of the day, I felt sad, sad, sad. You look sad, Humphrey, Golden Miranda said when she was cleaning my cage right after lunch. According to the chart Miss Mack had left, it was her turn to take care of me. Thank goodness. Miranda was the best cage cleaner and never said, yuck. She put on throwaway gloves, then cleaned my potty corner, changed my bedding, gave me fresh water, and finally, oh joy, gave me fresh grain, some lettuce, and mealworms. This will make you happy, she said as she slipped me the special treat she'd brought from home. Cauliflower. Naturally, Miranda had good taste. I promptly saved it in my cheek pouch until I could store it in my sleeping house. Hamsters like to stash food for the future. After my cage was taken care of, I felt well enough to observe Mrs. Brisbane more carefully. Now, Miss Mack was tall, wore bright blouses, short skirts, and high shoes. She wore bracelets that jingled and jangled. She spoke in a loud voice and waved her arms and walked all around the room when she taught. Mrs. Brisbane, on the other hand, was short with short gray hair. She wore dark clothes and flat shoes, and she didn't jingle-jangle at all. She spoke in a voice just loud enough to hear and sat at her desk and stood at the chalkboard when she taught. No wonder I was feeling drowsy after lunch. All that nice food and all that soft talking. Is that all this hamster does? Sleep? She asked at one point when she glanced over at my cage. Well, he's ternal, replied Raise Your Hand, Heidi Hopper. Raise your hand, Heidi, said Miss Brisbane. What's ternal? I was wide awake now. Nocturnal, I squeaked. Hamsters are nocturnal. Oh, you mean nocturnal, said Mrs. Brisbane, almost as if she had understood me. She turned and wrote the word on the board. Can anyone else name an animal that's nocturnal? Owl, said Heidi. Raise your hand, Heidi, said Mrs. Brisbane. But that is correct. An owl is nocturnal. Anyone else? A voice shouted out, My dad! Mrs. Brisbane looked around. Who said that? He did, AJ. Garth Tugwell pointed at AJ. Both boys sat at the table nearest to my cage. What about your dad? Mrs. Brisbane asked. AJ squirmed in his seat. Well, my mom always says my dad is nocturnal because he stays up so late watching TV. Stop giggling, Gail, and a few other students snickered. Mrs. Brisbane didn't crack a smile. Her use of the word is correct, she said, though technically humans are not nocturnal. Any others? Eventually the class came up with more names of nocturnal animals like bats and coyotes and opossums, and Mrs. Brisbane said that the class would be learning more about animal habits later in the year. If she'd just look at me, she could learn a lot, but I noticed for the rest of the day that Mrs. Brisbane stayed far away from my cage, and as if I had a disease or something. She read a mighty fine story to us in the afternoon. In fact, I couldn't get back to my nap afterward. It was about a scary house and these scratching noises and a ghost! Thump! 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 The ghost came down the hall. Oh, I had shivers and quivers. I have to say, Mrs. Brisbane knows how to read a story. Her voice changed and her eyes got wide, and I forgot about her gray hair and her dark suit. To squeak the truth, my fur was on end. The story had a funny ending because it turned out the ghost wasn't a ghost at all. It was an owl. At the end of the story, everybody laughed, even Mrs. Brisbane. I was beginning to think that life with this new teacher wouldn't be so bad, but I changed my mind when the bell rang at the end of the day and all my classmates raced out of the room, leaving me alone with her. She erased the chalkboard and gathered up her papers. I could tell that we'd be going home soon. Suddenly, I began to worry. What if Mrs. Brisbane lived in a scary house with spooky noises and a thumpy ghost? Or, even worse, what if Mrs. Brisbane had a pet, like a dog? My mind was racing as fast as I was spinning my wheel when she finally approached and looked down at me, frowning. Well, you're on your own, she said. With that, she closed the blinds and walked away. But I heard her mother rodent under her breath. She left the classroom and closed the door. She left me alone, all alone in room 26. I had never been alone before. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and we will pick up again later this week. Hope you have a fabulous Tuesday. Make sure you get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather, and have fun learning. Bye. See you tomorrow at our 10 o'clock meeting on Zoom. Bye.